Welcome to another Demarcation Media Mega Construx review. 2023 has come to an end, and since we have yet to see much in terms of set releases for 2024, I thought we would take another look back, all the way starting at 2020 and up to 2023, and look at which sets kind of fell short. Because Mega made so many amazing sets, and I did a list of the top 10 best sets that Mega made 2020 to 2023, but some of them fell a little short, and that's what I want to look at today. Now, before we jump into it, I just want to make it abundantly clear that this is not a bad sets list. This is going to be the top 10 most disappointing sets from 2020 until 2023. Again, that does not mean worst sets, it means disappointing. So, without any further ado, let's jump into it. Coming in the number 10 spot, we have the Skiff Intercept. Now, again, I just want to make it very clear that this is not a bad sets list. This is actually a very solid set. The build is a pretty good build. There's some weird bits, and the figure selection is absolutely fantastic. We get a green Mark 7, and he's got a shock rifle and a bulldog. That was one of the first times we had seen a shock rifle. We get a grunt and then two brutes in kind of mismatched armor. So that's all fantastic. Absolutely love the figure lineup. But the disappointment for me, and I think for a lot of us that got this set and liked it, is the fact that it's not in Halo Infinite, or it's not really not in the game. It's just not actually functioning. You can actually find this in game, and it's a burnt out wreck just tucked away in one corner of Zeta Halo, which is a huge disappointment. Now, that's not so much Mega's fault, because they were probably working with concept art, they were working with what they were given, but it is disappointing that we have this awesome set and it never is in use in the game at all. I have hope that we might see one in the future, but for now it is just a burnt out shell, and this is the only look that we've gotten of the skiff that isn't burnt and rusted out. So fingers crossed that we see it eventually, but yeah, the fact that it's not in game is pretty disappointing. Coming in at number 9, we have the Chopper Takedown. This set was extremely common for a while. It was in a lot of Targets. It went on sale for a while. You could get it for like $5. So this one is by no means hard to get, but there's a couple things that make it a little bit of a bummer. First of all, we have two named characters in this set. We have Escharum and Spartan Fred. Those are the first of my disappointments, because a chopper is a vehicle that you'd want to see in your banished diorama on the front lines. You'd probably want even more than one, but this is not an army buildable set. You don't want an army of Freds or an army of Escharums, and that is a bit of a bummer. I think a normal, just unnamed Spartan and also a normal brute would have made this set a lot better. In addition, we have Spartan Fred, who was not present in Infinite at all, which is very confusing, getting him in an Infinite set. He's based on his Shadows of Reach version, I believe, and he looks great. It's just disappointing that, he's here and we didn't actually see him in Infinite, but he's in this Infinite set fighting Escharum, the main baddie of Infinite. And speaking of Escharum, he does not have his helmet. He's in full battle gear, but he does not have his helmet. He also does not come with the Diminisher of Hope. He just has a grav hammer, which actually I believe I even have the wrong grav hammer. I just double checked, and yeah, that is not the correct grav hammer. That's one from a Halo Heroes figure. I think I stole it off of Decimus or something. The actual grav hammer you get is just a blank gray one, which is even worse because it looks even less like the Diminisher of Hope. Those things, to me, paired together, make this a rather disappointing set. It was so available and it was so not massable The chopper itself is a solid build and looks pretty accurate. I'm not a huge fan of the chopper, but I think this is a really great looking build. You also get a weird little turret for Fred to use, which is a nice add-on. But yeah, the figure selection, I think, is what really gets this down. The fact that you can't army build, the fact that Fred is here for some reason. I'm not opposed to getting a new Fred, but that's weird. And then also the fact that Escharum doesn't have his helmet and does not have his iconic weapon. Instead, they just gave him a grab hammer again, which is pretty disappointing. Now we have made it to the number 8 spot, and I want to say that obviously blind bag series are considered in this list. I did not consider blind bags or heroes in my best sets list, but for this list, because it was honestly quite difficult to come up with 10 disappointing sets, blind bags and heroes are included. And in number 8, we have Halo Infinite Series 5 blind bags. And I want to make it abundantly clear that to me, I don't think that this is disappointing at all. I love this whole lineup. I love getting different Spartans. This was a great showcase for the new EOD, which absolutely fantastic to get a new EOD. Absolutely fantastic to get the new Chief armor. The new, I don't even know what that armor is called. It's Spartan Kai's armor, I think, or Spartan Riz's armor. And then also, it's just everything about this series except for the robotic hand on the pilot. That to me was very disappointing, but everything else was fantastic. But for a lot of you guys, this was a disappointing series because it was entirely Spartans and nothing else. And I mean, I can kind of understand that. Again, I love getting Spartans, so I was not disappointed in the slightest. But yeah, getting other figures would have been nice, and I kind of understand the disappointment. We do have only Spartans. We have some from the TV show, the one from Reach, and then also the 2 from Infinite. I guess you could argue that the Reach one is Infinite because that's the blue Rampage Halo Infinite coating. So yeah, I say it's a good series. I like it. There's cool stuff here. The active camo Yoroi is a nice, it's a nice ultra rare, even though it's pretty ridiculous to get one. So as a whole, I would say that this series is not bad, but I do understand where you guys are coming from in saying that it's disappointing because there's nothing but Spartans in this lineup. Coming in the number 7 spot, we have Halo Universe Series 1 blind bags. Now, when this series was first revealed, they were first coming out, there was a lot of cool things about this series. It's like, oh my gosh, there's cool things going on, new Marine, new Brute, all that sort of thing. And now that it's been out for a while, and especially now that we've gotten Universe Series 2 and Universe Series 3, this is an incredibly underwhelming series. It has one of the worst Marines that Mega has ever made. The Grunt is fine, but kind of bland. I really like that CE Spartan. The Brute is fantastic. That Zvezda Spartan is weird because it's either overshield. No, it's not overshield. It can't be overshield. It's not the right color. I think it's supposed to just be what happens in Infinite when your team or an enemy gets shot and their shields like light up. It's very specific. It's oddly specific. Yes, that's kind of cool to me because I keep my friendlies set to purple. So that's kind of cool, but also it was a really weird way to debut the Zvezda, and really weird that they debuted it with that attachment. And then we've got the Halo Wars 2 Elite again, except he's in a really weird yellow, which he's not a bad figure. I just think that yellow is not a very appropriate color for him. So it's just a really mixed bag. It's like 50-50. Like I said, the Grunt's fine but bland. My favorite is the blue CE Spartan. It's nice to get more colors of those and to see them kind of leaning into that because it was kind of one of the colors that was cut from Clash on the Ring. And then the best figure would probably be that Brute. But yeah, it's just a very underwhelming series and not honestly the best introduction to the Universe line. I would say that this does not show off the potential of the Universe line as well as it could have. And yeah, the Universe Series 2 and 3 have just been so fantastic that this series, looking back at it, is just underwhelming and disappointing. Coming in the number 6 spot is a set that might ruffle some people's feathers. This is the 20th anniversary character pack, and it has had such a rocky release and lifespan. The release, or I guess not the release, the announcement was one of the coolest things Mega has ever done. They got a bunch of content creators and people throughout the community to reveal little bits and pieces. I got to reveal Sergeant Johnson and Guilty Spark and the little Cortana. So those figures kind of have a really special spot for me. That was awesome. And then the set released and sold out and released and sold out and released and sold out. And it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. So many of us were disappointed because it just kept selling out because it was an Amazon exclusive and the scalpers were in full force just buying everything. They were buying all of it. Mega promised they would fix that, and they did indeed fix the problem. But the problems didn't stop. Quality control for this set has been extremely spotty. You get all manner of misprints and weird joint issues and all of that. And sometimes, in some cases, this is more Amazon's problem, but people will get their set and it will have figures swapped out or whatnot. So that was really disappointing. And also, content-wise, the set had a lot of great figures. Jerome is one of my favorites, and then of course Johnson, like I said, he has a special spot because of him being the one that I was allowed to reveal. But the golden figures were a huge letdown. They are not good. Locke has the wrong shoulders. The Arbiter looks fine. Atriox looks like he's masquerading as a clown, and Cortana is one of the worst, possibly the worst Mega figure of all time, in my opinion. She just looks bad. So it was a great concept. The reveal was great, but the long waiting times and then the consistently rampant quality control lands this at a pretty solidly disappointing set, despite it being a great starter pack. It just didn't quite live up to its potential. We are at the halfway point now, number 5, and we are getting serious. Coming in the number 5 spot is Halo Heroes Series 16. Halo Heroes Series 16 was really important because it had the fan vote figure, the figure that we got to vote on. Where do I begin? This was botched really poorly, and I hate having to say things like this about Mega, but everything about this series was botched. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. Not everything. But we got all this build-up. All this hype of the behind the scenes of the designing of the Haunted. That was a fan vote winner. And yeah, for some people, that was a disappointment. But it won fair and square. And Mega was giving us all kinds of updates about the figure, about the design. And it was looking so good. And then it released. And might as well have just been dropped in a toilet somewhere in the Mattel headquarters and flushed, because barely anybody ever saw this series. It just kind of disappeared. Some people found it in their mayors and whatnot, but for the most part, this really didn't get a release. It just kind of disappeared, and it was extremely hard to find, and now we have the Haunted going for $50 and more online. The composition of the series, I would say, is really great. We have the HCS Spartan. We have Hudson, who is part of Fireteam Raven, and was really great to see Fireteam Raven. I believe that was the last member that we needed. Haunted, honestly, is a fantastic figure. I didn't vote for Haunted. I voted for CQB, but it looks fantastic. I am so on board with it. Kelly from the package looks really good, and we got a skirmisher minor with the return of the needle rifle. So composition wise, the series is great. It's just the amount of hype that was generated for a zero payoff. Like, most of us couldn't even get the figure that we voted on. Obviously, if you didn't vote for Haunted, then you might not care, but like, it's the fan vote figure. We want to be able to get the fan vote figure because we voted, and we just couldn't do that, and that was extremely disappointing. The other figures, yeah, they're great, and it's disappointing not to be able to get them, but not being able to get to the figure that we voted on, that we got to see all that hype built up for, was one of the most disappointing releases of the year. The number 4 spot goes to the Halo Reach Falcon sweep set. And I don't think I really need to say much about this. I think we all know the story of this set pretty well. It released, sold out, went months, and Mega was like, we're going to make more, don't worry. We discontinued it because of factory problems, and we'll make more. After a while, they did make more. It was a terrible re-release. It sold out almost instantly, and they were like, well, don't worry, guys, don't worry. We'll do one more run, and then that'll be that. That one more run happened, sold out, was terrible, and most of the fan base still doesn't have one to this day. The UK, for some reason, got like 2 or 3 extra stocks, but yeah, now we don't know if there's going to be any more runs. Are they just done for good? We don't really know. We don't know, and it's really disappointing because this is the best set that nobody can get. It's the perfect Halo Reach set. The Falcon is amazing. All the figures are just top-notch stuff, and we just can't get it. And it's selling for obscene prices online, and it not only makes me disappointed, but it also makes me mad when I see this set selling for like $700 online because people are not smart enough to refrain from pressing the buy now button because they think that $700 is what this thing is worth, and it's not. So that is extremely disappointing. I still am holding out that we might see another restock, and don't quote me on that because that is my own wishful thinking that we'll get another restock because we need this set to be readily available. Mega could stock it the way that they stocked the 20th pack, the way that they stocked the Pelican, where it's just like constant stock being made, and I think that would be fantastic because even for those of us who have one, buying another one would be great because, you know, it's nice to have another Falcon. I would buy a second one for another Falcon and also a Noble team to weather and make them look dirty. I'm not going to do that with these because I'm not going to be able to get another one. So that earns this set the number 4 spot, and I think it's going to sit very solidly at that number 4 spot because it really deserves it. It's just so disappointing that it's so well made and nobody can buy it. In a plot twist everybody saw coming, Series 17 makes it onto the list, taking the number 3 spot. Now, if you haven't heard about this Series 17 debacle, I don't know how, because it's been a huge just nightmare from beginning to end. And you might be on the side that says that they were fakes. You might be on the side that says they weren't fakes. Regardless, nobody can get this series. Entertainment Earth had pre-orders for cases for a while, and that didn't really pan out. I think a few people might have gotten their cases, but for the most part, they just didn't ship. Yeah. They not only do we have to deal with the terrible distribution for these, right? And that was Series 16's problem. You know, it just was, you couldn't get it anywhere. But the reason this lands higher on the list, higher than Series 16, is because it had the added issue of the fakes, the whatever you want to call them, the figures that were made using Mega's molds without Mega's plastic, whatever, however you want to look at it. There are copies of these figures that are far worse. Like, they're absolute garbage, and I actually mean that. They're worth being thrown in the trash. And the majority of the figures that are online, the majority of the Series 17 figures that are online are the fakes. So not only is it ridiculously hard to get these guys, but there's the illusion that they're readily available, and when you buy them, you end up with cheap crap. So those things paired together makes this series rather disappointing. Content-wise, it's pretty good. You know, the weapon, we got the weapon, and we got Ignovis. It's nice to have an HVT. The Yoroi is honestly a little disappointing, the official one, even just because the forearms and the head are more translucent than I would have liked. They're not using the older dark red plastic, which I think would have made the figure so much better. So the Yoroi itself is kind of disappointing. To me, I think the gumminess is a downside. Spartan Agrina looks pretty cool, and then Spartan Coven is my favorite figure from the series because that camo just looks awesome. But yeah, release-wise, you know, getting a hold of this series is a pain because it's hard to tell what's what when you're buying online. So because of that, that earns this series the number 3 spot, and I will just leave you with a warning of, if you're buying these figures, please just don't order them online unless you're ordering from a person that you know, a collector that you know, who got it in stores, because 9 times out of 10 you are going to end up with the fakes if you order online. We are in the top 2 now, and the number 2 slot goes to the Banished Phantom. Now, this one I'm sure is going to ruffle some feathers, because I know there's a lot of people that like this set. But before you get frustrated at my choice, hear me out. The Banished Phantom had a lot of hype around it. It was one of those things that even Mega, they felt the hype. They knew that there was hype for this set to become a thing. So they finally sat down and they were like, guys, it's time to make the Banished Phantom. And they did. And it had a little bit of a rocky release, but that's kind of par for the course for Mega. And then it was pretty readily available. Like, it's not that hard to go out and find a Banished Phantom for a retail or even sometimes less. However, the set itself, I feel, is lacking. Figure selection is pretty good. There's 4 figures. I think there could have been a few more just generic army builders, but we get Spartan Griffin, which is nice that we get an accurate Spartan Griffin, or as accurate as could be asked. We got a Brute Captain, which was kind of nice. He was basically a better version of the one that came in the Gungoose Gambit. And then the best Gummy figure of all time, Gummy Escherum. Very, very good figure. Still no diminisher of hope, but having a hologram of Escherum is great because he spent most of his time as a hologram monologuing. So it's very good to get that. And then the star of the whole show is, of course, Jaga, the Spartan Killer, and Mega made some new parts for him, showing that they could make a better robotic arm for the Spartans. And he just looks really good in general. I'm quite pleased with the way he came out. The Phantom itself, I was not pleased with, because this thing is so fragile. I breathe on it and it falls apart. I thought maybe I was just remembering it wrong and I was being too harsh. But yeah, rebuilding this thing was a pain, and I think I even built some stuff wrong. But I don't want to struggle with it more. Like, honestly, this is one of the most unpleasant builds I've had from Mega. It's just so freakishly fragile that... yeah, I just don't like handling it any more than I need to. Opening the top up, basically you break it every time because there's only 8 studs holding each side on. The doors open up, but the doors have like little to no detail and look pretty bad to me. Like, it needs something. There's too much blankness there. You can open it up. They have guns in there, but these guns are also really fragile. They're attached by 1 stud and they're not using the actual plasma turret piece for some odd reason. Oh, there it goes, it broke. They literally have plasma turrets and they're not using it. It's fairly generous with interior space, but yeah, it's just so fragile. It is smaller than it should have been, but also it's not that much smaller than the original Phantom from the comparisons that I've seen. I don't personally have one. But yeah, I mean, it's recognizable. It's not horrible, but it's just so fragile. I don't even like touching it. Figure selection, nice. Fragile Phantom, yeah, it's just unpleasant. It was unpleasant to put together. It's unpleasant to handle. I just don't like touching it. And because of that, it comes in the number 2 spot. And yeah, again, for some of you guys, you might think I'm being harsh, but genuinely, I have not had such an unpleasant building experience. It was just not good. It just not good. And especially when you put it alongside the Pelican, which the Pelican is an absolute brick. You can just grab that thing and fly it around the room. This, you grab it to fly it around the room and it starts falling apart. And the more you try to fix it, the more it tries to fall apart. So I just try to avoid touching it for as much as I possibly can. Yeah, for that reason, it comes in the number 2 spot. And finally, in the number 1 spot, we have the most disappointing set from 2020 until 2023. And I guess I'm kind of cheating here because technically speaking, this is 4 sets, but I'm counting them all as one. This is the Alpha 9 Droppods. They were to have released in cases, basically, where you would have, like 3 or 4 of each in a case, and you could buy each one separately for $10 USD and kind of buy them sort of like Halo Heroes. But since I'm counting Halo Heroes series together, I figured this was basically the equivalent of a full Heroes series. So I'm counting it as one set. And if you don't know, I'm going to tell you a little story. That story is these pods were made, Mega approved them, whatever. They were put into production. Retailers were secured. Walmart was going to be one of them. We know that for sure. There was actual tags in the toy aisle that showed that these pods were going to be there. And then when release was scheduled, which was going to be a spring or summer thing of 23, I think, nothing happened. They showed up in Frank & Sons, and they showed up a few places online, and nothing happened. So we heard nothing about them for the longest time, and then we heard that they had been discontinued completely because the retailers decided, hey, Mega, we don't actually want the product that we paid for. So I'm assuming Mega told Mattel, or Mattel was told first, I don't know. And Mattel said, oh, okay, well, stop production, we'll move on. What? No different solution? No new solution for getting these things sold? Nothing. Just canceled. Well, the retailers don't want to buy it anymore, so we're not going to make them. And this is probably more of a Mattel thing. Mattel, I believe, is in charge of these things. Well, yeah, they were just discontinued completely. And we had some batches out there floating around, some of which had the early batch problems of flaking print. But yeah, aside from that, they were just stopped. So there's a few batches floating around, and that's it. That is extremely disappointing because this is single-handedly one of the best decisions that Mega made ever, is making these guys in these new updated versions with their pod individually available. And then they were canceled, and there has not been any attempt since that we've seen to get these out onto shelves. And that's extremely disappointing to me because these are something that should be available to everybody. And yes, it's so easy to just hop on the I can't buy anything bandwagon and rail at Mega for this. But I'm like, come on, guys, come on. This is one of the most sought after set of characters out there. Same with the Falcon Sweep. Even though the Falcon Sweep got a little bit more of a release than this set did. But like, come on, Mattel. This is something that we fans would buy and buy and buy if it was made available, because you can buy it for the Alpha 9, you can buy it to paint the ODSTs, you can buy it to weather them. I could buy 3 or 4 different sets of these guys and use them all for different things. This is something that we want to buy. It's something that we still want to buy, and we want this to be available. Right now, it was one of the most disappointing releases ever. And that's saying something because there have been a lot of disappointing releases lately. But the fact that we were ready, it was coming to stores, we could see the tags, and then they were just discontinued. Still just makes me so frustrated and disappointed. And the fact that you guys are out there paying $120 for this set of 4. This is 4 little tiny pieces of plastic, and you're paying $120 for it. That is not worth it at all, and it makes me mad that there are people benefiting from the fact that there's been so much confusion surrounding this. So please do not pay the $120 for the set of 4. That is not worth it. Don't pay $30 for a pod. Like, yes, they're cool, but at the end of the day, there are other things you could buy with that money, and it is not worth it at all. Well, there you have it. That is the top 10 most disappointing sets from 2020 until 2023. Again, this is not the worst sets list. There are a lot of sets on this list that I would rather have not put on this list because a few things about the release could have made this a very different story. And I'm still hopeful that we might see the Falcon getting re-released. Again, don't quote me on this because this is me speculating and being hopeful. I am hopeful that we might see somebody at Mega convince Mattel, hey guys, it's time to reboot the Droppods because people still want it. I'm still hopeful, but as of right now, it is pretty disappointing. So, what is your most disappointing set of 2020 up till 2023. Is it because of distribution? Is it because of something else? The content of the set? Like, for me, if I had to pick one that was my most disappointing set, it would be the Phantom, purely because of how freakishly fragile this thing is. Yeah, that's basically the end of the story for this one. Most of these are disappointing because of their release. The Phantom is actually disappointing to me because it falls apart if I breathe on it. So, what's your most disappointing set? Would you change something about this list? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.